is Anton Young-Hair, and he is the CABOC co-founder and executive. And he'll talk about a survey that he completed with the CBOC compliance survey for 2021. So this is going to be interesting stuff. Go ahead, Anton.
Thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn's my boss. She's the president of the CABOC Association of Bond Oversight Committees. Broken promises, failure of Prop 39 school CBOCs to provide independent and transparent oversight. You see the student, very sad. This to me is a very sad situation, to having to discuss broken promises. The promises made in each district's bond oversight election, where they promise the voters that there will be independent oversight. That is the promise that this survey will demonstrate has been broken. The promise that is made in every single bond election. There's 87 bond elections on the ballot for the November election. Every single one of those elections, the districts make a promise to the voters that there'll be independent oversight. Next slide. What I'm going to do during this presentation is to discuss why we did the survey, how we did the survey, and next steps and questions. Next slide. Why did we do the survey? There's ample evidence that citizen bond oversight committees are not independent or transparent. You need only to refer to the Little Hoover Commission report, 2009, that reported on this. They followed up that report in 2017. I testified at that hearing, as well as other CABOC members testified. There's many audits by FSMAC, by the state controller and the state auditors. There's forensic accounting investigations, many performance audits, numerous grand jury reports, court cases, and anecdotal reports. So I think there's ample evidence that there's issues with bond oversight committees. The purpose of a compliance survey is to prevent deficiencies and violations and identify and correct them when they are found. However, there's been no independent compliance survey of the 499 California K-14 citizen bond oversight committees since the passage of Prop 39 almost 22 years ago. Next slide. How did we do the report? Initially, our board of directors in June 11th authorized the report. We picked a sample of 205 districts of the 490 using a random number generator. This sample size will results with a confidence level of 95% with a confidence interval of 5%. On July 5th, we sent a California Records Act request to the chief business official of the 205 sample districts, and we requested 9 documents. As you know, when you do a California Records Act request, you cannot ask for specific information. You can only ask for documents. So the scope of the audit was to ask for specific documents, and then we would analyze those documents to answer specific questions. For example, on the annual report issued during 2021, we would ask the question, was there a compliance opinion? We asked for the audit report for June 30 to 21, the performance audit. We asked for the agenda packets and minutes so we can see if they're meeting, if they're approving annual reports, if they're reviewing audit reports, etc. We asked for the board policies and bylaws that relate to CBOCs. We asked for copies of the independent legal agreement if it existed, and we asked for their website URL so that we could confirm that they did have a functioning website. And then, in the interest of making sure we had the right data, on October 3rd, we sent an email to the superintendent and each CBOC who had indicated to us in our bond request, and we know that bond request was over a 3-month period. So it took us 3 months to get the documents, and some of the documents were not available or the district did not respond. So any district who told us the document was not available or did not respond to our California Records Act request, we sent them an email telling them that. And we gave them to the end of the week, October 7th, to respond if they did not agree. Every district that responded, we responded back and resolved the issue. For example, a typical issue was the district said, oh, we gave you the audit report. And the report they gave us was the comprehensive audit report that every district is required to produce on all of their funds. That is not the annual financial report or the annual performance report required by Prop 39. And by the way, Prop 39 was an amendment to the California Constitution. So that requirement is actually in the Constitution. So we would write back to the auditor. Sometimes the district attorney got involved and we sent them a copy of the Prop 39 to try to convince them that the comprehensive audit is not the required bond audits. So that was done. We resolved those matters and prepared the final results. Next slide. The first item, the first report we reviewed was the annual report. Was an annual report issued during 2021? Was there a CBOC compliance opinion? And was there an annual report on the website? Now, we asked a number of other questions, but for the purpose of this presentation, I'm only picking out the significant questions. There was a total of 36 questions. We wrote the questions. We analyzed the documents that they gave to us and determined if the answer was on that document. For example, if they issued a report in 2021, we also asked them, or we asked our reviewers, what was the date that the report was issued? So we had a number of districts said, yeah, we issued a report in 2021. We went and looked at the report and it said, oh, it was issued in March 2022. So we said, okay, the answer to that question is no. You did not issue an annual report. The requirement is that you issue an annual report. You can't issue an annual report for 2021 and 2022. We found also districts who were behind in issuing annual reports. They hadn't issued an annual report for a couple of years. So they issued a couple annual reports in that year. About 1/4 of the dishes issued an annual report in 2021, and half of these reports had no compliance opinion. Now, the compliance opinion is the opinion of the CBOC that the district is in compliance with Prop 39. Now, some of the district would argue, oh, our auditor said we're in compliance. Why does the CBOC need to issue an opinion? Well, the law says the CBOC is required to provide an independent opinion. It's not the auditor's opinion. It's not the district's opinion. It's the CBO's opinion. Now, I had some districts that said, oh, The staff, the superintendent gave a report to the board, and the superintendent said, we're in compliance. Well, the superintendent's opinion is not the CBOC's opinion. Then I had another district who the chief business officer gave the opinion and said that this is the opinion of the CBOC, and he gave the opinion. But when you look at the district CBOC website, the CBOC never had an action at a board, at a committee meeting where they approved an annual report to the public. So even though the staff represented it was the CBOC's report, it was never approved by the CBOC. It was written by the staff, presented by the staff as a CBOC report. Next slide. We looked at the financial audit for June 2021. 86% of the districts who responded said that was done. Only half of those audit reports are on the CBOC website. So how can the public know what those audits say? There's a requirement that every document go on the CBOC website. In addition, there's a requirement that the CBOC accept both the performance audit and the finance audit each year, the annual audits. So half of these audits are not on the website. Next slide. Performance audit, only 49% completed it, and half of them again are not on the website. Next slide. Agenda packets. 82% of the districts, CBOCs that we reviewed, had one or more meetings. That means 12% of the CBOCs, we could find no evidence. We could find no agendas. We could find no minutes on their website that they even had one single meeting during the year. The only requirement in the Ed Code of a CBOC is to have one meeting a year. And we could not verify 12% having one single meeting during 2021. Next slide. On the minutes, as you know, in the education code, there's a requirement that there be 7 members. 1/3 of the agendas and minutes we reviewed did not have 7 members, a minimum of 7 members. 1/3 of the CBOCs, we could not confirm that they had at least 7 members. 31%, almost 1/3, we could not confirm that they have a taxpayer rep. And one half of the CBOCs, we could find no evidence in their minutes that they ever approved an annual report to the public. 1/2, no annual report approved. Next slide. District board policies. Every board policy that we reviewed is titled bylaws. In those bylaws approved by the District Board of Education, 43%, almost one half, had the phrase in the first, this was in the first paragraph of that bylaw, and I quote, "The committee does not have legal capacity independent from the district," close quote. Let me read that again. This is in almost 1/2 of the bylaws that we reviewed. And this is in the board approved bylaws. The committee, they were talking about the CBOC committee, does not have legal capacity independent from the district. To me, that means it's not an independent CBOC. In reviewing those policies, one half of those policies, bylaws approved by the district said that the committee could even not establish their own meeting schedule, which is so fundamental. A typical phrase was the CBOC can meet no more often than quarterly. You cannot have any more than 4 meetings a year. They had restrictions. The CBOC cannot establish subcommittees. And here's the one that really gets me. Can a CBOC establish its own bylaws? In 3/4 of these board-approved bylaws, the CBOC had no ability to establish its own bylaws, to govern how it's going to function, to say what officers they're going to have, how they're going to provide independent oversight, how they're going to review audits, how they're going to talk to contractors. 3/4 of those bylaws approved by school districts says the CBOC has no authority to have its own bylaws. They can't even determine when they're going to meet, what's going to be on the agenda, and how they're going to operate to provide independent oversight. Next slide. We asked for independent legal agreements. No district was able to provide us with any independent legal agreement that a CBOC had between the committee and an independent lawyer paid for by the district. It was noted that West Contra Costa Unified School District for 6 years did have such an agreement, but that was recently canceled. And Tom earlier referred to the Los Angeles Unified School District Memorandum of Understanding. I would note that that was adopted prior to the approval of Prop 39 in 2000. And that district not only has an independent legal counsel paid by the district, but they have an independent staff to the CBOC, which is paid by the district. But based on this survey, there's no district in California, no CBOC in California, at least in the sample group, who'd had such a district as of this time. Next slide. Does the CBOC have a website? Again, such a basic requirement, and we found 8% of the CBOCs. We couldn't even find a website, and that's after we spent hours searching through the search engine on the district's website, searching through Google. We could not find a CBOC website. Next slide. What are the next steps? Well, clearly we'll prepare a comprehensive written report. It'll have the answers to all the 36 questions that we reviewed. We'll have technical appendices as to how we did this. A question might be, should the survey results be made public to the individual districts? In other words, should ABC district know that they did not have a CBOC or didn't have any meetings? Who should be informed of the results of this survey? Are there additional research studies that we could do based on the documents? We have 200 documents, bylaws, audit reports, annual reports. We have a wealth of information. We could do surveys on performance audits, how many recommendations were made by various auditors. We could do additional surveys on the follow-up by the districts and the CBOC on audit recommendations. So there's a lot of additional research we could do on the wealth of information we've collected. Next slide. What do we do now? Can you open the chat for me? When is a school district in California that has questionable financial reports, what is the statute of limitation to request and conduct a forensic audit? I'm not aware of any statute of limitation. Tom, do you have a thought on that?
No, I think you're correct. There's a limit on what action can be taken. Obviously, if you go back and find something that was wrong 10 years ago, and that is an outgrowth of an audit, it would be hard to bring a criminal action in most cases because the statute of limitations for that. But for conducting an audit, I think it often makes sense to go back quite a ways. And the reason for that is there's a lot of things that go on. You have to go back quite a ways to find out what's going on. There's a lot of construction contracts for individual schools that you do need to go back 10 years to get the entire picture.
Next question is, what is the difference between a K-12 and a K-14 audit under Prop 39? There's no difference. The California Audit Guide Appendix A applies equally to K-12 and community colleges. There's no differences. Community college has exactly the same both constitutional requirements and statutory requirements. The only difference is their CBOC is a little, the legally required positions are a little different. For example, they're required to have a student who goes to the community college part of the CBOC. But other than that, everything else is the same. Can this presentation become a standalone piece and we can send it to our legislators? Absolutely. That's a great question, and the answer is yes. Can this be sent to the media? Absolutely. I would love to have some press conferences and send this out, and we will absolutely do that. Any further questions? Did CBOC website appear hard to find on purpose? Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer, but it seems to me that that's a very, technically it's very easy to do. And I'm not sure why that was not done, but certainly you cannot have a transparent CBOC if the website is not even available to the public. And, a good test of this is just go to Google. Go to Google and put the district's name and CBOC. That's a good way to see if they have a website. I found one district who listed the website under the facilities construction department. Probably that's going to be a hard place to find it if somebody Googles CBOC. Can we find out if our college was part of the survey, not the results? Yes, you certainly can. And is the CBOC considered public so survey results are not available to CBOC members? Well, the survey results, not sure I understand the question, but the survey results are clearly public, and anybody that wants the survey results for any specific district that's certainly available because we're only reporting what is on the district's website. So we got the documents from the districts. Some cases they didn't give us the document. We couldn't include it in the survey. School districts are compliance minded. Best practice will not be adopted by many unless the laws make it necessary. Well, I think you're correct. I think as a footnote, when the state audit guide, which governs audits for school districts, comes out annually. And annually, each year, they ask the auditor to review specific items. For example, 2 years ago, they asked the auditor, who audits every school district in California, to check on the vaccination records. And that came up with particular doubt. The audit guide for performance and financial audits has not been changed since 2016. I think it would be nice if the audit guide said, did the CBOC or did the district have a CBOC? And the auditor each year opine on that. Did the district have a taxpayer rep? Did the district have 7 CBOC members on the CBOC? So I think the annual audit guide, which every auditor who does a compliance audit for the bond program could be asked these questions. And the questions could change every year, just like they do in the K-12 world. So I think that would be a good practice. And it's one of the things that our organization is going to advocate for, that the audit each year answers some of those basic compliance questions. Now, we're not going to ask, did you do a good annual report? That's a subjective question. But did you do an annual report with a compliance opinion, which is required? And by the way, issuing an annual report is the only legal requirement that I'm aware of that a CBOC has to do every year. They're not, other than meet once a year and issue a compliance report, that is the absolute minimum that a CBOC has to do. And I think if the auditor would check that out every year, it would be a great value. The other thing I think would be of value to have all the audit reports in one place. In the K-12 world, all the audit reports have to be reported to the state controller. So you can go to the state controller's website and review any district's audit report. Right now, I have about 200 audit reports. I have about probably a larger group of bond audit reports than anybody in California. I think districts should be required to update their audit reports to state controller. It only takes 2 minutes. You click and it's there. Are CBOC's rules applied to general obligation bonds? Well, citizen bond oversight committees oversee Prop 39 general obligation bonds. So that's the job of a CBOC, is to report on and issue opinion on general obligation bonds. Next question. This is closely tied to legislative addenda. Wouldn't it make sense to have the legislative priorities, the ability of CBOCs to establish their own bylaws? Tom, why don't you speak to that?
Yes, most definitely. That is one of the greatest examples of independence. If an organization does not have the power to set its own bylaws, to set its own schedule of meetings, to establish its own agenda, how can you say that it's independent? So as you saw on my presentation, the PowerPoint, these are definitely things that we are most interested in getting firmed up in law. Frankly, I think the current statutory language, just by saying independent bond oversight committee requires that. But you can always find somebody who says, oh, no, it didn't specifically require it. Therefore, it's not required and it's prohibited even. So yes, agree quite strongly on that.
I've had attorneys send me opinions that CBOC has no authority to adopt its own bylaws. And as you noted in the survey, 75% of the bylaws approved by the district. I mean, just the thought of a district even approving a bylaw for the CBOC, I think is abhorrent. But just to make sure, they put a clause in that says the CBOC cannot change it. 75% of the bylaws approved by districts have that requirement. Are your survey results on the CBOC website? Yes, they will be. Is a school district board, if the school district board has an attorney present, what would you do or say? You know what? Let me give you a story. A member of a CBOC called me last week, and they told me that their school district bond council was chairing their CBOC meeting. Understand that. Their school district bond council was chairing their CBOC meeting. During a subsequent meeting, one of the members said, isn't this a conflict of interest, having the district bond council chairing our meeting? So you know what they did? They changed the website. I know this because I looked at the website. They changed the website. The chair of the CBOC on the website is blank. There's no CBOC member, chair of the CBOC. And the district's bond council continues to chair that CBOC's meeting. I would argue that it's a conflict of interest. I would argue for a school district, either bond council or a school district attorney, to provide any legal advice to a CBOC is a violation of the oath of a lawyer. I think it's a violation of the California Bar Association canons. A CBOC lawyer has to be independent of the district, has to have an attorney-client privilege with the CBOC. There's an inherent conflict between a district attorney advising a CBOC, in my view, and I think Tom eloquently spoke to that in the legislative program. I would love to have a case. I'd love to have a test case on this. I'm trying to get a district who will let me take the district to court and see if we can get a case on this.
Anton, we have Amina with her hand up, and she's not using chat right now. So can we jump into her real quick?
Yeah, the problem with using the chat is we get into discussions.
Yeah.
And I'd rather keep with what we've done with everybody else, if that's okay.
Okay.
And we will.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this as a wealth of knowledge. The question was prior related to the access to bond advice from a lawyer. Can we use, or should we use, or are they, like myself, I'm a board member, am I allowed to approach the county attorneys with a situation like this, or are they just beholden to the district schools?
That's a matter for your own board and legal counsel. So it's not a matter I can opine on.
I'll just say you might want to contact your county civil grand jury to see if they want to take a look at it.
Oh, I'm glad you said that, really briefly, because it's like I said, we did have the grand jury look into it, and it came back without a decision at all. So, I mean, this is gonna unearth old issues. And I wasn't on the board then, but that's the response I have for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anton.
Mr. Young here, who is in charge of holding school districts accountable for every time they are using bond monies? I would say the CBOC. That's their primary responsibility. And if you read the legislative intent, it says they should do a vigorous oversight of the bond expenditures. That's the promise. That's the promise that was made to the voters when they adopted the bond measure. And I would argue that is the job of the CBOC. How about a district bond lawyer advising CBOC without a fee as a favor to the school district because the district attorney is retained for the selling of bonds? It's a conflict of interest. The bond attorney is responsible to the bond holders and the district. The bond counsel cannot provide independent legal advice to the CBOC. The CBOC is an independent body. Some board members, I had a board member at one meeting asked, why do we need a CBOC? I said, madam, you don't have to have a CBOC. Just go for a Prop 46 bond issue with a 2/3 vote. You can have no CBOC. There's no requirement for a CBOC on a Prop 46 general bond measure, which would require a 2/3 vote. That happened prior to 2000. There was no CBOCs prior to Prop 39 in 2000. And if you don't want to have a CBOC, just don't have a Prop 39 bond. Any other questions for me?
No, I guess not, Anton. Maybe we can finish your little session early and get to the next session, which is comments from participants. Shall we do that?
Sounds good.
Okay. Are there any comments from the participants? Where do we find that?
Well, they put them on the chat and I will read them off and we can see who would like to answer them.
Okay.
And this can be comments on anything talked today, anything that wasn't discussed today. And no, at the end of this session, you can go to our website, help desk, you can ask any question you want, bondoversight.org.
So Anton is monitoring the comments from the participants, if any.
It says, I'll put it in a minute. When will the survey results be on the website? Linda, are you here? I think, Linda, when are the results going to be on the website?
Did you give me permission to put them on the website?
You hereby have permission.
Okay, they're on the website in 2 minutes. Under, if you go to the homepage, on the top, there's a link to go to the 2022 conference page. Everything will be right there. There's links to all the presentations there and to the program.
Wow, you're incredible.
I know. Thank you for appreciating that.
Okay, here's a, whoa, I got a long question here. This question is at the City College of San Francisco. The bond council focused on correct conduct of meetings where the CBOC should be reviewing bond expenditures using quarter in which they concurred. I asked questions about certain unbudgeted expenses approved by the district governing board that were later allowed to be charged to a facility bond. I guess with respect to the first speaker's question, the factual statement that he made for me is that the committee doesn't review expenditures until after they're audited. Well, I think, and Tom can agree, can opine on this also, but the committee can review expenditures after they're made. They don't have to wait till after audit. By the way, the audit comes out a year later, and the requirement to give the audit to the CBOC is 9 months after the end of the fiscal year. So that could be 12 plus 9. That's gonna be a lot of months. But the CBOC is authorized, and one of their primary responsibility is to look at the expenditures as they're made. Tom, you want to have a thought on that?
Yeah, if you wait until the expenditures have been made, you're way too late. You've got to get on top of this at the very beginning. So start with, does the district have a plan? Does it have a facilities master plan? Does it have a plan for the specific bond issue as to what its priorities are? Does it have the personnel, the procedures, the systems in place to actually manage it? And then are those procedures, systems, people working? So to wait until after the fact is way too late. You have to get involved on the ground floor to see that they've got good systems in place, and then monitor things very closely as they go. You don't wait until after the audit report comes out. That's useless. Thank you. I feel much better now.
Next question. I served on the CBOC for 3 years and have been on the board for 6 years. And I've learned so much from this session. Had I known what I know now, our district would have saved thousands of dollars. Well, I think you're correct. I think a CBOC overlooking the expenditures. Next question. Do you roughly know how long does a performance audit take? Should have asked that earlier. Tom, you want to opine on that?
Well, it will vary, of course, by exactly what you're doing and how deep you're going. For certain small ones, it would probably take longer to get the process started and the performance auditor engaged than to do the performance audit. But I have been involved in some performance audits that took the better part of a year to do. But that was a mighty big performance audit. I would say for the most part, 3 to 6 months perhaps, but there's a lot of exceptions. If you get out there and you can't find the records, that can slow things down quite a bit. I'll tell you one thing that really slows things down. When you go out there, you find some things you don't like, and you tell the person, we'll be back on Monday, and you come back on Monday and you find out that the person has committed suicide over the weekend, that generally means the performance audit is going to take a lot longer to be completed.
Oh, no.
And that does happen. That does happen.
Yeah.
You know, I want to tell you a little bit about the San Francisco story. If you want to know what folks can do, San Francisco Unified School District had a CBOC in place for 3 years. And a group of citizens got involved, ad hoc group, and said, we need to have a CBOC that's over. San Francisco Unified has $2 billion construction program. So they organized a recall of 3 school board members in San Francisco. That was successful. And as a result of that effort, the district reconstituted the CBOC, and the mayor appointed the chair of the CBOC to the school district board of trustees to replace one of the recalled trustees. So that shows what a committed group of citizens was able to do when the district wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And that speaks to the question, I cannot get the CBOCs to even address this advice. Well, the problem was a lot of the or in some district, the CBOC members. I had one district where every CBOC member was a former member of the school board. Now, do you think that's an independent CBOC? I've had another district where the members of the CBOC were the personal friends of the facility manager in that district. Do you think that provided for an independent CBOC? So if you have a CBOC that isn't listening to your advice, you probably have to go outside the CBOC. And when I want to make sure that everybody understands, when Tom spoke earlier about the legislative program, there's a specific section in the Ed Code on Prop 39 bonds, which says any citizen in the district can initiate a lawsuit against the district. That lawsuit will get precedent in the court, and that lawsuit, if successful, could result in a order to stop construction while the issue is ongoing. So a CBOC member as an individual could initiate such a lawsuit. We would be delighted to support that person with legal advice. And I think that's the only remedy that I could see. If you got a CBOC who's supposed to be providing independent advice, does not want to do so. Tom, do you have any other further thought on that?
In agreement with you on that. Yeah, it's just amazing what some people think they can get away with in ignoring the law.